right, Karthik? Right. Over to you, Karthik.
Hi, Varad. Thanks for passing over and honored to be here as part of the panel. Thank you, Srinivas, for putting me on. I started my journey in about year 2000. That's when I graduated from my business administration and then moved to US. Graduated from Worcester Polytechnic Institute, not from IIT Madras. I'm a little bit of an anomaly here. Since then I've been involved in startup world for the past 16, 17 years. Started with a small healthcare startup called MC Strategies. They were into healthcare e-learning space. And soon that startup was sold to another company. I generally don't stick around in huge corporation where there is like a lot of red tape. I left that company, joined another startup called AirWatch. They were into mobile device management space. Did some interesting work for them. Along the side, a couple of other things happened in terms of startup for my own startups, right? I founded uh, um, apps related. App was something that was new at that time, around 2008-9. So I got onto measuring data usage related stuff on your phones, and did a startup around that concept. It was pretty successful. And then around the same concept, did another startup around 2011 that focused on providing tools for group data usage monitoring, which unfortunately didn't go so well. So I exited out of that idea. We sort of, closed out that, and then founded another startup with three other partners. I was into golfing space, so we did content creation as well as social golfing, and that was sold 2 years back to another company. So we had a good exit, and on other side, I'm still handling. My mobile AirWatch startup kind of they got acquired into VMware, and I run few products for them. VMware is, even though it's a big company, it kind of operates in a startup fashion for the stuff that I work there. So it's quite enjoyable. So I continue to do that, and on side, I'm always open to exploring other startup ideas and something that's looking for something that really excites me and contribute in some meaningful way to the society. So that's kind of my journey.
Great. Thanks, Karthik. Now, I think we have to go to the next part of the panel discussion. Over to you, Mani.
Thanks, Varad. Yeah, I think we have already did an upstart of this entire session with so much of success stories from the world of startups. I already feel we did an upstart on the session. Thanks for all the wonderful share. And it was so amazing to hear out all the things that being shared over there. And I always, going back to the theme of the panel today, it's always said like, listen to the experts because they tell you what cannot be done and why. And then you can take it and do it. So with this in the background or with this in the insight, I would like to go back to the panelists and ask one important question, like what are the steps for startup success? I would like to hear the views starting with Mr. Vasan. Vasan, could you please share what do you think are the important steps for a startup success?
Okay, thank you. Great question. I think I don't want to take everybody's opportunities to say things. So I'll just talk about a couple of initial things that's very important. One is to realize that the buck stops with you. So when you're starting up, all the risks are at your doorstep, right? You are accountable for everything that you don't have control over in life. So it could be environment, it could be market. So you have to remember that as your mindset, and you have to go in with the fact of trying to win despite that being the challenge that you're going to face. As a corporate, the risks are somebody else. So if there's a problem, you can always quit and look for another job. When it's a startup, you're stuck with what you've got. The most important thing that I feel a lot of startups fail to really get their hands around is what is the problem they're trying to solve for the customer. Right? So understanding the core value proposition and the pain point, and understanding that mapping. Right? A lot of people think it's the features or what you're building, the idea is great, but that's just an idea. You got to understand how that translates to value for customer. And you can't do that unless you go talk to customers. So I think the first recommendation is to go talk to as many customers as you can and see understand what is it that you're solving for the customer. What is the value that they're getting out of it? It's a long process because we have done this for the starters, and they go to 5-6 iterations and they still don't figure out what they mean by value. They keep coming back with something else. But you got to realize that you have to be solving the top 1, 2, or 3 pain points of a customer, not something which is low down in the priority. And I think that a quick example of that is how somebody's, like they said, if you think there's a nice cool winter jacket, right? What is the value that the winter jacket gives depends on who the customer is and where they are and what they're using it for. I mean, you can't talk about saying there's a fantastic jacket. I mean, a person has to be experiencing cold and needs to survive in cold weather for them to use the jacket. Right? It's a very trivial example, but you need to understand what is the value, and only those people will ever use that jacket, those who are going to experience the cold and need something for that. Right? So the value is what the individual perceives in terms of saving themselves with the cold. The value is not what the jacket contains. It's the value happens at the interface of what you're offering and what the other person is getting from it. So it's not independent of the buyer. And that's an important lesson to learn in startups, which most people fail, and they go down the path and realize much later and do pivots. Right? So that's my quick 2-minute spiel on this.
Yeah, there's a saying here. Yeah, this is Srinivas. I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a saying here that did the dog eat the dog food? So if you make dog food as a product and your dog doesn't eat it, it's got no value, right? So that's exactly what it is. Because the dog eat the dog food. But I was actually asked this question in an IPO meeting in '96, and I didn't know what I was talking about. Membranes, and somebody asked me dog. I couldn't understand what he was talking about. Where is dog and where is dog food? But what he meant was that do what your customer wants you to do, and not what you want the customer to do. Okay? Yeah, over to you, Money. Just 1 second. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was well summed up, Kilambi, to whatever Mr. Vasan has explained. Focus on the goal, and the goal is the problem. It's solving the problem and making the value creation. Wonderful share. Thanks for sharing that, Mr. Vasan.